Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel. That is the R in the RK Stumbling Bear, and I'm a reader and a writer. And pardon the voice, I am getting over being sick, but I wanted to come do something fun. The long list for the Goodreads Choice Awards has been announced, and I am not good enough to read 20 books in a short span for however long this contest is going for. So I decided instead that I'm going to get the books out because I haven't read any of the 20 in the Sci-Fi list, and let's do a try a chapter tag. So I will be back as I report on my progress of that, basically telling you whether I would continue reading this or no, and why. So I am back because I finished the first chapter of Service Module by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So this book was already on my interest list because Adrian Tchaikovsky I find is a hit or miss author, but when he hits for me, he really hits. So reading this first chapter about a robot named Charles, who is a valet going through his normal routine, and his daily schedule is very much about following the routines and subroutines and commands that he has been given or have not been rescinded from the past. And at the end of the first chapter, Charles realizes that he has murdered his human master. And that's where it leaves off. Now, that's not really a spoiler because it does talk about that in the back matter. So I found this chapter compelling and definitely want to continue reading this book. However, I don't think I'm going to be reading it here in the next month or so, but definitely will come back to revisit this. And I will come back and talk to you after I finish a chapter from another of the 20. Hi, I'm back. And we're going to see how well this works because I want to update you, but I also got to put clean dishes away. The next on the list for the Goodreads Choice Awards that I picked up was Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde. Now, this is not the one that is on the Goodreads Choice Awards. The one that's on there is Red Side Story. Makes me think of West Side Story every time I read it. But I haven't read the first book. There's 3 sequels, I think, on the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I haven't read the first books for. So instead of picking up Red Side Story and reading the first chapter to determine if I wanted to read it or not, I picked up Shades of Grey because if I'm not interested in this one, I'm never going to get to Red Side Story. This is not my first Jasper Fforde, but my sister for years has been asking me to read this, so it was on my TBR list. And if you have never read a Jasper Fforde, he's a little zany. I would say humorous in his writing. You take like the real world and then you like turn it like 180 degrees, yeah. For a moment I had to think, how many degrees is in a circle? But because like the first chapter is really setting the place and the world for us. This character basically tells us how it's going to end, and it's just the style of writing really does jive with me, and if I had the time I would just read this straight through and keep going. So I am very excited to keep this on my TBR. I have finished another first chapter, and this is another one where the book that I read was not the one that was nominated this year. And that's because the one that was nominated this year is Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer. And I haven't read any of this series. So, of course, I started with Annihilation. Now, I've never read anything by Jeff Vandermeer before, but enough of my friends who have talked about that he just does weird sci-fi. And I did see the movie that this was based off of because Natalie Portman was in it. So I'm vaguely aware of the premise of this book, and this is one that I find extremely compelling, even with the different writing style and the weirdness where like nobody uses their first names, it's only their job position. Yeah, definitely I'm going to continue reading this after I finish reading all the first chapters of this challenge. All right, you're going to see me a lot today because my vacation turned into a staycation, so I get to work more on this project. I am back again with I Cheerfully Refuse by Leif Inger. This is a literary fiction. It is not a sci-fi. Even my library doesn't have it marked as a sci-fi. So, like, what the fuck, Goodreads? Why do you keep putting literary fiction and sci-fi? And it's not just this year. They do it multiple years in a row. Just because a setting is in the future or dystopian or there's sci-fi elements does not make something a sci-fi. Science fiction isn't so much the setting, it's the content. In this, what is being actually examined? Who the fuck knows? In that first chapter, it's two interactions between two people, and you really don't get a sense of much of anything. There's a lot of purple prose, and you find out that the main character's name is Rainier, and people call him Rainy, and he plays in a band. That's it. You know, having read the premise of the book before reading the chapter, it's that first chapter that tells you it's a literary fiction and not a science fiction. So, Goodreads, stop it. And no, I'm not going to continue reading this because this does not interest me. I don't want to read pages and pages of something to never have a resolution of anything. I don't enjoy that. So, I'll be back. So, in the last clip, I basically was going on about how I hate literary sci-fi. I don't like it as a category. This next book is like one of the exceptions, and that is Beautyland by Marie-Hélène Bertino. And I think that's because in this one, the main character is an alien from another place sent to Earth to gather information on humans and human behavior. Even though the structure of how this is written, it's written in parts, not like one chapter, 2 chapters, 3 chapters kind of thing. And it's more like little vignettes, very like short, like paragraphs. So it's non-traditional writing, which is where I would think more literary fiction. And the messages that it's sharing more falls in the literary fiction. You could still argue sci-fi because the main character is an alien and is having contact with aliens from her home planet. So I'm of two minds of this book. This is definitely one where I would need to be in the right mood to read it. And it would probably be read because it would fulfill a readathon challenge or prompt. That's really the reason I would continue with this. Not that it's bad at all. If you're looking for more, I guess, literary sci-fi, I would say Beautyland is probably the right way to go. I'm back because I finished another chapter, and this time for The Ministry of Time. And today's the 26th of November, so the top 10 lists have come out, and this is on it. I usually hate time travel stories. Most of the time they don't work for me. There are some exceptions, and I think that this one actually might be one, especially because at the beginning it basically stated that don't worry about the time travel and how it works, because that's not the real purpose of the story. So in this, we follow the main character who we know that her mom came from Cambodia, but it doesn't tell us her name. Actually, I'm using she because that's just how the narrator feels to me. No, definitely using she because it's referenced in here. It is. And she is living with Captain Graham Gore, who was taken out of his time. According to history, he had left a camp of soldiers and disappeared. This was one of the Arctic expeditions looking for the Northwest Passage, and so now he is living with her and a housemate, now they're housemates in a place in London, and he's having to acclimate to the modern world. And yeah, this one I would definitely want to continue reading. Again, unfortunately, I have to take it back to the library because somebody else has requested it, but I will look to pick this up pretty soon again. Hey, So I am back to talk about 4 books today. I have the habit of reading before I go to sleep for an hour, so I read different chapters of books. And it actually happens that all 4 of these are on the top 10. That wasn't planned. I had just grabbed another stack. This first one, I'm not surprised that it's on there at all, and it is The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. I know that they're extremely popular after The Expanse. Not my favorite series. So I was like, you know what? We'll give it a try. Maybe I'll get into this. And after this first chapter, no, I didn't. Yeah, I think one of the things that James S.A. Corey has going for him is they write at a 3rd grade literacy level. Now, that's not an insult. That's not bad. That's really common for good writing, is to be at that level. So then it's more accessible to everybody. Unfortunately, even in the United States, not everybody is completely literate or reads at a level that they should for their age. And so I totally understand where a lot of people find James S.A. Corey as someone they can pick up. For me, this first chapter was boring. We're following David as he's at a party, and he is acting like a politician, where he's mirroring everyone's statements, getting everyone to talk more, and he doesn't talk about himself. That's 101 politician. However, the authors are trying to use it as to say that people then are not valuing him, or they are underestimating him. That was the word they used. And I call bullshit. I was like, no, he was doing a total politician thing. And only an idiot does not know what he was doing. And then he has this unrequited crush on a woman who is in a relationship with somebody else on a research team. And I'm just like, no. This world sounds interesting, but the people in it do not. So I am not going to continue with this. But again, I can see where he will be very popular. I then picked up Extinction by Douglas Preston. And this has the premise that kind of reminded me of Jurassic Park, actually. Not dinosaurs, but other creatures like woolly mammoths have been de-extinct. That's what they call it. First chapter, we're following a couple who is seeing the wonders of all of this, and I was enjoying it until they got to the woman and wife are horny. But she's pregnant, and so that's why her horniness level's gone up. And I'm like, first off, this man has absolutely no idea about having sex on a campsite. It just seemed gratuitous to throw that in there. And, there's other ways to show a healthy marriage besides sex. And so that really kind of turned me off of a premise that otherwise I probably would have wanted to read further to find out what was going on. No, I mean, I'm a romance reader. Sex doesn't bother me, but the placement of it was weird. Also, my library doesn't consider this a science fiction either, so Goodreads, what the hell? This next one is the first book, because the sequel is on there. And the sequel is Moons of the Turning Leaves, but I haven't read it. Haven't read Moon of the Crushed Snow yet. So, I have it here. And this first chapter, first off, I've heard a lot about this, and so it's already on my TBR list. And reading the first chapter, it's really setting you in the world. You get to meet Evan, get to see his culture with hunting, and his family, how he is a devoted family man. And that's what you get in the first chapter. Okay, kind of like Shades of Grey, you're being set up for the world. It's already on my TBR list. I've already heard about it, so yeah, I'm going to continue reading it. Last one is also on my TBR list, and that is The Stardust Grail by Yumi Kitsai. Yeah, this is following Maya, who is a retired thief working at a university archives. And in the first chapter, you get to see her expertise when it comes to archival items, artifacts. And this is right up my alley. If I had the time, I would just sit down and read it straight through. So yes, it's going to stay on my list. So hey, two that, nope, not going to continue with, and two that, yeah, I'll continue with. I'm doing good. I have 5 more books out from the library currently, and more waiting. So I will be back when I've read more. I'm back because I have read a chapter of Annibot by Sierra Greer. This is just one of many of the sci-fi that's come out this year that has a sex theme, some sort of sexual revolution, I don't know, or conversations about sex and autonomy, basically. And this is following a sex bot. So the first chapter is we get to know Annie and her owner Doug, and then we get to meet his friend Roland. And nothing is wrong with this book. This just isn't a book for me. So, and if this is your sort of topic that you like for a sci-fi, you will like this just fine. Just for me, this isn't something that I am really interested in reading. It doesn't resonate with me. It's not a subject that I'm worried about, So, if you like themes of sex and autonomy, there you go. This is probably going to be for you. I am back because I finished the first chapter of The Other Valley by Scott Alexander Howard. This is kind of an unusual sci-fi for me. In this, the premise is you have a series of valleys that are the same, just some are in the past and some are in the future. And while technically you can cross to the different valleys, the government's been set up to only allow very, very few people to do that. And it's more about their mourning and grief so they get closure. And in this first chapter, we've met Odile, who is a shy young woman ready to start an apprenticeship, and her mother wants her to be a counselor, someone in politics who decides if people get to go, if people get to leave their valley. And this one has me intrigued. Not my typical science fiction, but it started off in a way that I do want to continue reading. All right, I'm back because I finished 2 other books. Well, first chapters of 2 other books. And the first is An Ascension by Martin McInnes. This is another one that's just not for me. I think it's just the style it's written in. The first chapter was all about her parents and like hindsight, how she defines them. And for me, for science fiction, I don't need that. That comes out later in characterization. So, not interested in continuing to read this. Again, not my style. And then the other one is The Blueprint by Regiana Rashad. And again, this one is not my style, and I don't think that this is written for me. This is set in a dystopian world where Black women are owned property again. And I understand that a lot of people in dystopian sci-fi have this idea of the future where women will be owned property, and not only women, just all people. And it's not a future that I see happening. But I also think that this is a story that is cathartic for the author to write about slavery, or a form of slavery in a future, while parsing and dealing with the effects of slavery in the past. Again, not for me, not the type of sci-fi I like. Right, so then I was also looking at my library holds, and it's like there's, I think, 4 books that I'm waiting for the library to get to me so I can finish my first chapter reviews. So I just read a little bit of Orbital And again, here we have a literary science fiction. I'm not interested in this. I mean, you've already heard me rant and rave that I think that if it's literary, it should be in the literary section, not in sci-fi. Goodreads doesn't listen to me, and other people disagree and think this should belong in sci-fi, so not for me, though. All right, I am back because I have read a chapter in. I'm starting to worry about this Black Box of Doom, which I had seen this, and just reading the description really reminded me of the Transporter, and it wasn't something I was interested in. And now, after reading the first chapter, I still don't think I'm interested in it, but I could see myself picking this up in a weird situation, maybe if it fit like a book prompt or something. So at this point, the winner of the Sci-Fi Goodreads 2024 has been announced, and it's the Ministry of Time, which I am interested in continuing with. But I have 4 more books that I still want to read a first chapter for and decide whether I would read them or not. The interesting thing is, 2 of these books my library can't find anymore. So the 2 that they know where they are when they get returned and I get them. If the other 2 are still showing as unknown, then I'll just end the blog there and we'll just count them as a loss because, well, you can't do anything if you can't find it. So 4 more left. Let's see if I'm able to get these read before January. I am back having finally read A Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo Campbell. This is one of the books that was nominated for the Sci-Fi Goodreads Choice Awards. And having read the premise, I didn't think this would be something I would be interested in. But having read the first chapter, I'm definitely interested into continuing. Not sure if I would consider this sci-fi or if I would consider this literary. But either way, it is something that I'm interested in reading further on in the future. Who knew? Hi, I am back to close out my Try a Chapter video that I was doing for all the sci-fi that was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards for the sci-fi section, because my library has lost 3 books, or people just haven't returned them. And so the 3 books that I will not be talking about at all because they're lost is Baby X, The Family Experiment, and Yours for the Taking. So I have no opinion of those because I did not get to read them. I'm curious, do any of these books sound interesting? I know it's been like 2 months since they were all announced and everyone's probably over the Goodreads Choice Awards, but I found this interesting, and I think in the future I'll probably continue to do this because I just don't read fast enough to read 10 or 20 books in a month. So yeah, I'd love to know if there's any books that you're interested in picking up now. Please let me know down below. In the last clip, I was kind of irritated with literary sci-fi. This next book is, and hi, he's coming in. What's up?
Oh, who? You talking to somebody?
No, I'm recording. Get back here, just tell me what you want to say.
I was gonna say